Washington, Jesus and Steve Jobs have in common? Well, they were nonconformists. They colored outside the lines and they changed the world. Today's episode will make you laugh, dream, and color outside the lines so that you too can change the world.
Welcome to the World Changer Show with Matt McWilliams. I'm your host, Mark Sieverkrop, a world changer just like you and Matt. On each show, we're going to bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unleash the world changer inside of you and live with passion, lead with purpose, and leave a legacy. Thanks for joining us today. Now let's get started. So Matt, this episode really qualifies as a world-changing episode. You know, I was preparing to record this and listening to your interview, and I got to say the audience is in for a huge, huge treat. This is an interview that changed the way I view life.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to get out of every interview. It's, I mean, wow, way to put the pressure on this interview. No, I shouldn't say this, but this is one of my favorite interviews because I had an opportunity to interview a guy named Jason Kotecki. Mm-hmm. And Jason has a new book that just came out. I mean, this thing, like I had it, thankfully, an advanced copy of it. It's called Penguins Can't Fly and 39 Other Rules That Don't Exist. And it's awesome. And here's what we're going to talk about in today's interview. We're going to talk about, the adultitis, this concept of adultitis. And we're going to talk about why it's dangerous. And it's these penguins can't fly and 39 other rules exist. The premise of the book is that there are rules in life that aren't actually rules. And we go through some of those examples. I share some of my favorites. And one of those rules, just to give you this like little sneak preview, but one of those rules we talked about at the intro is, don't color outside the lines. And Jason talks about how did coloring inside the lines become the norm? And yes, like understandably so, it is an indicator of your motor abilities when you're a 2-year-old, when you're a 3-year-old. Right. Like you go, wow, that's beautiful. If they just go all over the place, you're like, are you like, do you have any hand-eye coordination? You kind of wonder if you have like a 7-year-old who can't color inside the lines. Right. But one of those rules that he says is thou shalt color inside the lines, and how much has that confined us? And so that's a good example. There's some funnier ones like, thou shalt not wear pajamas out in public, late at night to go to the ice cream shop. And he talks about how, like it's fun to wake up the kids like, hey, you're going to bed. Surprise, we're going, they get them all dressed. You're all ready, like ready for bed. And then you go to Dairy Queen. Right. So there's some cool stuff. And it's one of my most favorite interviews that I've ever done. And Jason quickly became one of my most favorite people that I've ever had the pleasure of talking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. It's, I just want to jump into the episode. The interview is so good, but before we do, I just want to tell the audience, you and Jason at the end have this really cool contest that you come up with. And I think you just came up with it on the fly, but it's really cool. And I don't want the audience to miss that because, that is a really neat way that they'll be able to get a few things from us. And also, I also want to remind people that they can get all of the information about the contest, information about Jason, if you'll go to the show notes page for today, which is mattmcwilliams.com/081. So, Matt, I think we should just jump into the episode.
We should, but I want to point out something. Last week you talked about delegation.
Yes.
And this is the second episode that you and I have done together. And one of the funny things about delegation that I literally just thought of, Mark, going back to that, and it ties into this episode, is that contest. You're right. We made that contest up on the fly. I gotta be honest, I don't remember what the contest is. But the beauty of that is I have delegated responsibility for things like remembering contests that Matt announces live on, in an interview to Mark. And so now Mark will help us remember what that contest is. You will hear me talk about it at the end of the episode or at the end of the interview with Jason. So this is also a very clever way of getting you to listen to the entire interview. Yes. Or, many of you will fast forward all the way to the end because it is a contest and you're going to win some stuff. There's stuff you can actually win. Their monetary value, including actual money, which has an equivalent monetary value.
It's a high monetary value. Yes,
it does. Money does. And so, that's at the end of the interview with Jason, and we'll kind of recap that. Afterwards.
Can I continue with the introduction of Jason now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Today's guest is an artist, speaker, husband, father, self-proclaimed serial aficionado, and author of the book Penguins Can't Fly and 39 Rules That Don't Exist. He has made it his mission in life to annihilate adultitis by uncovering the secrets of childhood and sharing them with others. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Matt's interview with Jason Kotecki. And for those of you who are watching the video of this, this is one of the last interviews that Matt did where he did not record video. So when you listen to this, there will just be a nice picture of the book, but hang around because at the end we do have our recap like Matt mentioned, and we'll talk a little bit more about that contest. So make sure you hang around. And here's the interview with Jason Kotecki. There we go.
That was awesome, man. Yeah, so this behind the scenes access brought to you by Penguins Can't Fly and 39 Other Rules That Don't Exist, which is available in all major bookstores and on Amazon.com, as well as the show notes page today at mattmcwilliams.com/081. And there will be a link there and you can grab this book. No, seriously, I recommend it. So
yes.
Mark and I now are going to jump to the part of the program where we now show you a still image of the book for approximately, how long is this interview? Well, like 50 minutes, give or take?
I think it's close to an hour.
It's 50 to 60 minutes of awesome sauce.
Awesome sauce.
So we're going to play that now for those of you on video. And then we're going to come on and talk about the end. So normally this will be one of two videos that is actually edited, and it is only edited to the point that we're putting in the audio with the picture. Everything else you will ever see on these videos is completely uncut, behind the scenes, mess ups and all. So like I said, this is a behind the scenes look at how we do these. So let's jump right into that interview. It's my intro music. All right, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going awesome, man. So we connected because you have this book coming out, but first I want to kind of touch on something there. You have a picture of you in the back of your new book that has you wearing a blazer and a green eggs and ham shirt. That makes you kind of weird, right?
A little bit. I'm glad you actually mentioned that one. I thought you were going to mention the one towards the back where it's my sophomore year high school picture, which is, you're going to talk weird. That's even worse. So
that's not weird. That's just awkward.
Yeah. Well, that in spades.
So yeah, tell me about that. Like the green eggs and ham shirt, blazer. I know we're going to have fun with this interview today. So you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. So you and your wife's name's Kim.
Yep.
That is right. If that's wrong, and this is really weird.
Yeah, you got it.
You started this thing called Escape Adulthood, and you say that the mission is basically to help, and I'm paraphrasing here, but to help people over the age of 18-ish to destroy adultitis. Well, first off, what is adultitis?
Well, adultitis is what happens when you forget what it was like to be a kid. That's the sort of the short story. I will be forever grateful to Seth Godin, who I had a chance to interview a while back. And one of the things he pointed out, he said, you realize that adultitis literally means swelling of the adult. And I love that because I'm like, you know what? That's right. That's exactly right. It's what happens when you have too much adult. And I'm sure that many people like that, Matt, that you wonder if they ever laughed in their life, you could never even imagine them being 5 years old because the adult has completely crowded out the fun childlike side. And so I one of the things I have to say right up at the beginning is I am not about being childish necessarily. It's more about being childlike, and there is a difference. And probably anyone who's listening that has a husband probably knows the difference. But it's about what are those things from childhood that we would be really be a big advantage to kind of bring with us. So things like curiosity and playfulness and delighting in little things and stuff like that.
Well, I guess my question is, when I think of adultitis, or when I think of just adults in general, adultitis is what gave us the Industrial Revolution and clean water, sanitation, gardening. I don't know. I kept trying to think of something. What did adultitis give us? These are good things. Like we all agree, clean water, sanitation are good things. So why would you want to destroy adultitis, I guess.
Well, I would argue that it's that adultitis actually didn't give us those things that childlike spirit did. So, Henry Ford, when he came up with the idea of applying the assembly line to making vehicles, that he actually broke a rule that didn't exist, because at the time that sort of thing just wasn't done. I think of someone like Steve Jobs who decided, maybe all computers don't need to be beige, was kind of a big deal that was breaking a rule. So I would argue that any of the cool things that we have and that we're grateful for are things that were started by pretty innovative people that we take for granted now. But at the time, we took a little bit of creativity and big dreams. I mean, look at the Wright brothers. They're one of my favorite examples of, just a few years before the Wright brothers were successful in their building this plane. There were very smart people who said that building a heavier than air flying machine was impossible. And now we have so many of these crazy flying machines taking off and landing every single day. It's easy for us to think they were always here, or that it was just meant to be. So, but they weren't back in the time. So, I think now we think of things like, okay, will there ever be a cure to autism or AIDS? Seems like, well, that's never going to happen, but we've got some pretty creative people who are trying to figure out that maybe by the time, a couple years, or our grandkids, they'll look back and say, you mean people died of AIDS? How is that even possible? So.
Yeah. So you mean to tell me airplanes haven't always been around?
Believe it or not, no.
I thought that was in the Bible.
the New Testament, right at the end.
Yeah, it's second hesitations. Yeah. It's in 3rd Proverbs, but it's funny when you mentioned Henry Ford just then. I mean, I think I watched a documentary on him probably 3 or 4 months ago on PBS, and it seems to me like he actually succumbed to adultitis, because you're right. He, the creation of the automobile, the assembly line, all these things were so out of the box ideas. They broke every rule that existed, but then over time he fell prey to adultitis. The old, I'm sure the quote, like, you can have any color car you want as long as it's black.
Yep.
And then eventually he just became kind of ruthless and very uncreative. And what happened, Ford went from having 80 or 90% market share to like 10% market share, because he lost that childlike creativity, and Ford as a company lost that childlike creativity. So I think it's interesting to watch especially when you pick individuals and you look at where they were at one time and then where they were later. Sometimes they often succumb to that, sadly.
Well, and I think that speaks to a bigger point about adultitis. I've been speaking about this for 15 years now, almost 15 years, and the thing about adultitis, I wish there was some sort of a magic pill that you could take that would just make you adultitis free. But it's not. It's one of those things. It's hard. It's coming hard after us every single day. We're always at risk for it. I kind of look at it as like it's not like a diet. So like I would love it if I could eat spinach for a week and then never have to worry about what I eat for the rest of my life and still maintain 6-pack abs. Not going to happen. I think adultitis is the same way. It's coming hard after every single one of us, and I think the best we could hope for is to maintain have adultitis be in a controllable state of remission, is what I like to call it. I think that's what we're going for, because there's just not a lot of people who are, I mean, even me, I am not, 100% adultitis free all the time. One of the closest ones I've ever seen, and of course I didn't know him very well, but I don't know if you remember Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. I mean, that guy had to be pretty close to being completely adultitis free. I don't know how he was off the camera, but he is quite an unusual character, and I don't know how many people are quite like that. But we're all fluctuating between the stages, between stage 1, stage 2, full blown adultitis. It's even the best of us can succump to it.
I presume stage 4 is called an accountant.
Yeah, lawyer.
Actually, I know some really fun lawyers.
I do too. I just thought of one. He's gonna totally be mad at me when I said that, because he'll give me a hard time. But
I didn't mean our accountant, Brent.
No.
Brent, you're awesome. I didn't mean that at all. Every time I've ever insulted accountants, I feel like I need to apologize to him, even though I know he doesn't listen. So you mentioned you've been doing this for 15 years. How did you get into this? Like, what's the backstory? How you got into this? I'll use the air quotes and call this a profession, Jason. I'm kidding.
That's good. Yeah.
So how did you get into this?
Well, it's funny you said that because I think I'm a lot of things, whether it's an author, an artist, a professional speaker, but really what I've figured out that what I'm doing is I'm a professional reminderer and I'm a professional permission granter. That seems to be
how many ers were there in that?
There were two. Yeah, I don't know if that's a real word or not, but that's kind of what I do because most of the stuff I talk about is not new things. It's just stuff that I think we need to be reminded of once in a while because we're so busy in the day-to-day fight of survival and kind of in the tidal wave of busyness that we all fight. Started for me, ironically, long ago. I was in art school. I went to be an artist, and I met a sweet girl who I immediately fell in love with and drew pictures of what we look like as little kids. We shared this sort of childlike spirit, and I drew pictures, these little comics that I would give to her on these homemade, aka cheap gifts, greeting cards, things like that. And interestingly enough, this technique did not work at all when I was in high school. I would draw little things for girls and they'd put it up in their locker and stuff like that. And it was always at first like, oh, this is so cute. But then magically about a week later, I suddenly morphed into like a brother. And so, once you're at that stage, second dates aren't usually coming.
You went past the friend zone and you went into brother zone.
Yeah.
That's even worse.
Bad. So I against all better judgment, I did the same thing with Kim, and for whatever reason, it stuck, and she seemed to appreciate them, and I wasn't like a brother to her. I think maybe it's because she had 3 sisters. Maybe she doesn't even know what a brother is like, so that may have worked in my favor. I don't know. So anyway, I made these little characters for her, and eventually I thought they would make a neat comic strip, and so I did a comic strip called Kim and Jason. It was about childhood. Did that for about 6 years. And through that, I would get asked to come to schools to do cartooning workshops where I would teach the kids how to write and draw comic strips. And it got me gave me some good experience at holding the attention of a variety of ages. And from there, we got asked to come speak at churches where I would kind of do a cartooning workshop and then add a message to it, and the parents would be there. And my first one of those, that was the beginning of the end. I had some guy come up to me at the end, all sheepish, and he's like, I really got a lot out of that. Like, shook my hand as if he wasn't supposed to. But it was like, yes, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So eventually, that's kind of what we moved into, is doing speaking about, this adultitis thing and how to be more childlike. And it went from churches to now mostly what we do is keynotes for associations, conferences, businesses, things like that. And through it all, I've been able to figure out how to include my artwork into it. So that's still a big part of what I do. The book is filled with art. And it's a really cool job, I guess. Like you said, you could call it a quote profession. Certainly not one that I ever would have gotten, in those little tests you take when you're in high school of what you're good at. And they say, oh, you'd be good as an engineer or a teacher or this. This wasn't on that list. So somehow it worked out that I was able to kind of combine all these seemingly disparate skills and talents. And here we are today.
I have the feeling that high school guidance counselors had a hard time with you.
I don't know. At the time, like, art was my thing, so it was just kind of like they were like, well, they knew I was pretty good, and I think they just kind of patted me on the head because they knew that was not exactly a path to riches by any means. I remember my parents, who were very supportive, they invited my high school art teacher over for dinner, partly to see if I was actually any good, and partly to see if there was any hope of me making a living and moving out of their house. So they even weren't sure what the future held, but it's been a fun ride.
I can just see them thinking you were probably still going to be living there when you were 30.
Well, it's funny. because after I graduated from college, I had a year before Kim was going to graduate, and we were engaged. So I actually put together a proposal for them, asking them if I could live at home for a year, and I had this whole like plan, and it was headlined with a quote from Yoda, "Do or do not, there is no try." And it was basically my pitch to say, like, okay, I'm going to try to do this freelancing. Here's all the things I'm going to do. If you let me live here for a year, like, this is what I'll do. And I think they were just so blown away by the initiative, which I had not really shown up to that point, that they're like, okay, I guess that's fine. So that worked out good. But yeah, I can only imagine that they were like, oh God, is he going to be 40 years old in my basement, and how is this going to work? So.
Oh, I'm impressed though. You put together like a PowerPoint slide presentation, like probably animated with good graphics because you're an artist, just to say, "Hey, Mom and Dad, can I live at home for a year?" That's impressive.
Well, it wasn't quite PowerPoint, but yeah, it was typed out, double spaced. Had all these bullet points on it.
Oh, okay.
And
double spaced is important.
Yeah, it was all professional looking. Aside from the Star Wars quote, but
not with a Comic Sans font, I presume.
No,
probably
no.
Times New Roman. Got to be Times New Roman. Yeah,
something a self-respecting accountant would use probably.
It's our second accountant mention of the day. Yeah, I just kind of went with the hey Mom, I'm leaving college. I'm going to be home in 2 days. Have the room ready for me approach, and thankfully that worked. That worked, thankfully. Route. But yeah. So I'm kind of curious. Before we get into the book, what do your kids think of you?
Well, they're young enough to still think I'm pretty cool.
Awesome.
So that's I don't know how long that's going to last, but I think what's weird is I think that they think that I'm normal, which I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's just, Kim and I, it's just how we are now. People think, oh, your kids must have so much fun and all this stuff. And it's like, I think we do try to have fun, but parenting is still a hard gig. So, there's times where we lament the fact that our house is not far enough off the ground that if we were to catapult ourselves out of the window, we wouldn't be dead. There's times we just want to be like, let's just end it all. Because it's maddening sometimes, but that's just part of it. And so it's not about eliminating stress or pretending like there aren't difficult things going on. It's basically about what do you do about it, So yeah, we try to have fun as much as we can with this parenting thing and this life thing and all of it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's interesting for our daughter, going back to the quote unquote profession thing. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but our daughter has never known me to not work from home or at least to have my own schedule. I have an office for a while that I went to, and that wasn't really working because I was like, it's 11:30. I haven't gone yet. Well, why would I go for 4 hours? So I'm just going to work from home today. Yeah. And my office at home is nicer anyway. So it's like, she's never known anything but that, but me working from home and controlling my own schedule. And so for her to say on a Monday afternoon or Tuesday at, 2:00, Daddy, will you come with us to the zoo? That's not an unusual question for her to ask.
Right.
And she occasionally I do have to tell her no. Like if she had asked me at 2:00 today to go to the zoo, we're recording an interview at 3 and I'm not going to cancel that. But most days I'm able to say yes.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know anything but that. And so that's why I asked that question, because like your kids don't know anything but the dad who gets to do all these cool things and talks about escaping adultitis. So that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, it reminds me, like, I think probably we share the same thing, that freedom is a very high value for me me and Kim, and freedom of schedule is part of it. I think I can totally relate to you and your daughter's perspective, because Kim and I were just thinking about that the other day. So our oldest is 6.5. And we homeschool, so we've got a whole other brand of crazy that we bring into the mix. But Lucy will wake up and she has in her head what she's going to do that day. And so if we happen to say, oh, well, we have to go to this place or we need to go here, it kind of like upsets. He's like, well, what do you mean? This is what I had planned, you know, like I was going to set up a store today and I was going to do this. And
awesome.
there's part of me that's like, boy, kid, you do not know how good you have it. Like if you were in regular school, you would be in for a wake up call. And then I'm starting to be worried that like, oh, weird, she is going to not be ready for the real world, blah, blah, blah. But then Kim and I were talking about it, and you're like, no, this is exactly what we want is we basically consider ourselves unemployable. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to instill in our kids is for them to be unemployable, in that they are so ingrained in what they're passionate about, what their interest is, and that they can't not go their own way and do their own thing and see the opportunity, whatever opportunities they are. And even if they do get some sort of a traditional job, that what they bring to the table will be so valuable because they're not looking at themselves as just a traditional employee that follows the rules. So it is kind of a weird thing to have, okay, like what perception our kids have and what does that mean and is that a good thing? And it's interesting.
I love it. I love that you say you're unemployable. I say all the time, I am utterly unemployable.
Yep.
I am incapable mentally of working for someone else. And I know that's not for everyone, but for me, that's just not how I operate. I feel like it completely takes away my creativity, and I like making mistakes too much. I don't love the punishment that I get from mistakes, but I like breaking stuff. I like exploring, and I have what they call the explorer gene.
Okay.
And some people call that ADHD, but now they're calling it the explorer gene.
All right.
And I'm attention challenged, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But
and
I love it. It's not. In fact, I have an interview coming up with a guy named Dr. Dale Archer, who wrote a book called The ADHD Advantage. Fascinating book, by the way, and I highly recommend it. And I can't wait to share that episode with everyone. But speaking of books, that was a good segue. I'm usually not very good at those.
Smooth.
That was you just eased right in. And then I had to announce that was a good segue. That just ruins the good segue if I announce how proud I am of the segue. Let's talk about this book. It's called Penguins Can't Fly and 39 Other Rules That Don't Exist. And I'll be honest, what attracted me to this book was the fact that it looks cool. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, but I'm a slow reader. I'm a very slow reader, and I read this book cover to cover in less than a week, so that's saying something. And it has pictures, like you said, not the lame pictures that are basically nothing but charts and graphs like you would get in, say, Good to Great.
Right.
But it has real drawings. It has cartoons. This is a Dr. Seuss book. And I love it. I mean, and you did these drawings. You did all the drawings in this, right?
Every single one of them. There
man,
photos that we pulled from elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh man, it's awesome. And
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those books I remember telling. I think I told my wife it was either after Rule 1 or Rule 2. It was very early on that I said I really can't wait to do this interview because I want to get the word out about this book, because I think that this book, in an odd way, because this is not. This isn't the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. This isn't the biography of Steve Jobs. But I felt like that this book was going to be, well, that's why I'm having you on the World Changer show. This book would be a book that changes the world if we can get it out to enough people, because this is a very important message. And so I want to start right at the beginning. You start off the book by writing, following the rules is an excellent way to fit in and avoid being laughed at or scorned, but it's not a particularly effective way of living an amazing story. I love that. So what's your favorite rule to break?
Oh boy.
And really I should say non-rule, because this is about rules that we think are rules, but they're not really rules. Yeah. What's your favorite non-rule to break would be a better question.
First of all, thank you so much for the kind words. I really appreciate that. It is a very unusual book. We have a lot of people who think it's a children's book, and I get that because the illustrations are very whimsical. But as you know, it's not. It's hard to put it in a box of what kind of book it is. I hope it someday becomes one of those things of like other people copy it because it's so different. But in the beginning stages, it makes it hard to sell sometimes. But I appreciate that you get the vision for it. So thank you for that.
I'm calling it a life manual.
Oh, that's good. We can go with that. I like that.
I don't think it's an actual category at Barnes & Noble, but...
Yeah, well, and I like to think of it as like it's a good book for people who don't like to read books, because there's more meat in it. You see like neat little gifty books that have inspirational quotes, and this is a little bit reminiscent of that. But then this actually has meat in it. Hopefully, there's things in there that get you thinking and get people talking, and which is what we wanted.
Quick story, Jason.
Yeah.
So this just tells you there's some meat. I got out the highlighter. Like, that's what I do with books. I highlight, and then I make notes, and I start writing in the margins. And especially when I'm going to interview the author, I write questions and things like that in the margin. And I got the highlighter out, and I turned to the page, and I literally like pressed the highlighter down on the page. And Tara, my wife, goes, no, don't ruin the book. Like, it's a book. She's like, no, this book's different. There's pictures and like, no, because we want our daughter to have this. And I'm like, okay, so what do I do? I can't highlight. She's like, here, take this. And she gives me these little Post-it notes, and I'm like Post-it noting pages and writing in very small print. I'm writing in like 7-point font to fit it on these things, my questions and stuff like that. And I'm like rewriting. I'm like, basically I'm writing, instead of highlighting, I'm writing what you say in the book, which by the way makes you very selective about what you put on those. I'm not writing entire passages now. I'm writing like, anyway, so I just like, my wife was like, no, do not highlight that book.
That's funny. That's funny.
Rule number 41, do not highlight this book. Anyway.
Yeah, there you go. Well, yeah, because we do it at the end. We haven't asked what rules did we miss, and that's what we want. We want people. We just want to start a conversation because there's way too many of them to fit in this book. So I'll accept that one as the next one. Thou shalt not highlight this book.
So what's your favorite non-rule to break now that I haven't let you answer the question I asked you 2 minutes ago?
Yes, and that was partially my fault. So let's see. I think, okay, I'll go with, there's two. One is fun and one is more serious. I think the fun one is thou shalt not draw on thy children. I tell in the story a book about drawing a little purple mustache on my son Ben, and then we went out to eat. And that was a blast. I had no idea that you could have so much fun doing that. And I think any parent that has kids, if you're not taking advantage of the inalienable right and power to draw on your children, you are completely missing out. So that one is a fun one. On the more serious side, one of them is the last one actually is thou shalt wait for permission. I think that's a big one that I'm a big fan of the famous adage, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. And it goes back to even when we were doing the comic strip. I mean, it got syndicated dozens of times by the syndicates, and it was like, well, they said no, is this going to be the end? And we decided, well, let's just put it online and let's do it ourselves. We ended up self-syndicating it in about a dozen, almost 20 papers. And it's kind of like, that's the attitude I have, is like, I would like to have people say this is great, but if they're not going to, then if I believe in it, I just got to go for it. And I think too many people are just waiting for permission to start something and to do what they want to do. And that's why I joked earlier, I call myself a professional permission granter, because it seems like people have this thing in the back of their head. They know all this stuff. They want to live a better story. They want to have more fun. They want to do some of these things, and they're just waiting for someone to say it's okay. And sometimes just me being on a stage, for some reason gives it authority that if I give permission, they're like, that's what they need. And but I think that's probably the one that hits closest to home for me right now, is that one. But all of them have some sort of personal thing. Those happen to be the ones that come to mind right now.
Yeah. I mean, we're never going to get permission to do anything exceptional. That's the reality, because people are always going to try to hold us back, or they're just not going to know. Like, here's permission to go invent flight.
Yeah.
And really, like, you have permission to do that. So here's what I'm going to say. Jason and I are just granting blanket permission for everyone listening to do something awesome, whatever that is, as long as it's legal and moral. Go do something awesome. You have permission. So I know my favorite non-rule to break is thou shalt not jump in puddles.
Nice.
And that came about because so last year we go to SeaWorld and in Orlando, went to SeaWorld in San Diego this year actually.
Cool.
And that's the other crazy thing about our daughter. She's been to 2 SeaWorlds, like both oceans in the U.S. and like flown and all that stuff. And she's 4. And like I was 9 before I stepped foot on an airplane. I think I was 11 before I stepped foot on an airplane. I was 30 something before I went to SeaWorld. So
I was 20 something before I was on a plane. So your daughter's got to be by a mile.
It's crazy. It's insane. So anyway, we went to SeaWorld. And we had there were 13 of us, and my wife and I had basically, for the most part, paid for this whole trip for 13 people. And so I, of course, am going, well, let's carry the 0 and move the decimal point moves to the right one. That's great. And it's like, okay, so this is how much this trip costs. So we're going to have fun. We're going to see everything. We're going to, every attraction, we're getting to the park when they open, and we're not leaving until they close. Nobody needs sleep this whole week.
Sam, we're going to personally say my name, and this is going to be great.
Yes. And then one of the 2-year-olds gets sick. How dare she, right? So that ruined Tuesday. And it's 1,007 degrees in August in Florida. I don't know whose idea that was, not mine. But anyway, we go to SeaWorld. First day, it's like, yeah, woo! We rode 1 roller coaster and saw like 2 exhibits. We're halfway through the Shamu show, and it starts to rain. And then it starts to lightning. And then it won't stop raining. Well, and I'm kind of like, this sucks. I'm soaking wet, and I wanted to see Shamu and everybody to have fun. And we start walking back. And now we have to walk like 3.5 miles to our car. And that's not an exaggeration. It's actually 3.5 miles. And after about a mile,
for the close parking too, didn't you?
No, we didn't. But we were still pretty close. But we were at the farthest point away. And anybody who's been to SeaWorld in Orlando knows where Shamu Stadium is. It's actually in Georgia. Yeah. And so we're walking back, and after about a mile of just kind of like being grumpy, I kind of like kicked one of the puddles at my nephew, and he kind of laughed. Well, long story short is for the next 2 miles, and my wife just loves it. She said, this was like the most fun you've ever been in your entire life. I was like a kid. I had escaped adultitis. I'm splashing in the puddles. I'm already soaking wet, so who cares? I'm kicking them. I'm like running along. I'm like jumping in puddles next to people that I know and occasionally next to angry men that I don't know. And I'm like, dude, you're soaking wet. Who cares? But anyway, so mine is thou shalt not jump in puddles because that's just a fun rule to not break.
Yeah.
What's the dumbest one in your opinion? Like, what's the one that just makes the least sense?
Oh boy. By far, it's the one about spouses shall not swap sides of the bed. You should see I'll ask.
I remember
people,
that one.
I'll ask people in my programs. I'll say, okay, what are some rules that don't exist that you sometimes live by? And like, most of the time there's a lot of blank stares because if these rules were obvious, Matt, most of us, we wouldn't be doing them. So it takes a little while to think about them. And then I'll throw out, well, what about this one? What about, any of you who are married, what if tonight you do something crazy when you're in bed and the lights are out and no one's paying attention? And you switch sides of the bed. And you should see they're like jumping out of their seat like, no, my husband would never allow that. We'd never do that. They're going crazy. And it's so funny because I can relate to it because my wife and I, we sleep on specific sides of the bed. We have never once had a conversation about this. We go to a hotel. No. The bed can be in a completely different part of the room. We still gravitate to the same thing. I do not know how this happened or why it happened, but it's funny how fired up people get out.
Do you sleep on the same side as in left or right, or who's closest to the door?
Left or right.
See, I always sleep on as you're laying on the bed. I'm on the right side. I've always been in the same spot. But if we go to a hotel and the left side is closer to the door, because I know, and it's an irrational thing. If some guy came in wielding a gun, that extra 2 feet that I'm closer to him is somehow going to be able to help me protect my wife. I don't know. I guess
you're a human speed bump. I get it. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe what if he has a chainsaw? Anyway, that's a Ken Davis thing. So I'm always basically in the position that's closest to the door.
Okay.
So that's the only time it alternates is if the bed is facing with the left side closest to the door.
Okay. Yeah. But that's just it's a ridiculous rule. But yeah, it just seems to be one that people really, it's another funny one too that people like. So the idea of eating breakfast for dinner. I'll bring that up, and people people are so excited about eating breakfast for dinner, like they're getting away with something. Pancake and sausage and eggs for dinner. Oh, I love it. And it's like, I do too. I don't know who the PR agent was for bacon and eggs and pancakes that said, no, we own breakfast. You shall not eat us at other times of the day. But it's funny how people think they're really getting away with something when they're eating breakfast for dinner.
Oh, like that's 3 words in our house that get everyone excited: breakfast for dinner. about once a month. It's like, and it's usually when it's honestly, it's like, I don't really feel like cooking that or that or that, and I don't feel like throwing to something kind of like crappy together. Like, we're gonna have frozen pizza. Like that just doesn't excite. So it's like, you know what? We're gonna have some hash browns, some pancakes, some sausage, and like a fruit smoothie. Because we got to get something remotely healthy in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fun. Mine, I think it's, is it like the second or third one is the color inside the lines.
Yeah.
Because that is, I will never forget the horrifying feeling I felt. It was right after I started reading this book, and I haven't spent a lot of time being able to observe our daughter coloring and like really getting to be like super creative, because that's not when I'm usually available for time wise. And so like I haven't really got to watch the process of her learning to like color and create art and write. I just get to see the results.
Sure.
And I saw, I looked over one day and she had like colored what you would call perfectly. In other words, there wasn't a pink dinosaur. And it wasn't just the all over the page, like see how many colors you can put on the page type thing. It was really done well. It was actually a piece of art. And I remember feeling, that's awesome, Araceli. You colored inside. Not going to say that. Not going to say that because, one of the things you wrote in the book, you say that the greatest, most inspiring figures in the history of mankind have one thing in common. They were nonconformist. They colored way outside the lines. And you start talking about like Gandhi, Mother Teresa, MLK, Martin Luther King, George Washington, Jesus, Steve Jobs. They didn't use an instruction manual.
Yep.
And I hate that rule. I think it's stupid.
I concur, Matt. I concur. I think, people, and you go way back to when you're in kindergarten, there's a certain thing of like judging hand-eye coordination, like gross, fine motor skills, whatever. Like that's part of the reason why we're excited when kids can color inside the lines. But it's funny how then that becomes the judge for art. Like that has nothing to do with art. It has to do with how well we can have hand-eye coordination, which is important when we're little kids. But then that becomes the be-all and end-all of like, well, this is what makes good art, is to be conform and to make sure everything is in the lines, and then that, of course, continues all throughout school, pretty much.
I don't know why, but I just thought of, so like even sports, if you think about why some sports were invented, they were invented because there was a rule in the other sport and somebody went, that's a dumb rule. Like, what if you could actually use your hands? Well, there's handball instead of soccer. That's all handball is soccer with your hands.
With hands.
I mean, that's what hockey is. It's soccer with a stick and a puck on ice. Like, why can soccer not be played on frozen pond? I don't know. What are we going to do? That would be weird. We'll have a puck.
Do it.
That's what it is. It's golf is hockey while standing still. I don't know, but no, yeah.
There needs to be more contact in golf. We need to come up with something with that. That'll be the next one.
So I grew up playing golf. I actually, for a very short time, played professionally after college, and so one of the things that we would do when I played with, there was a group of friends and I that were kind of like some of the top players in the state of Tennessee, and as like a mental test, one of the things that we actually allowed ourselves to do was we could say anything at a certain volume. We couldn't scream, but you could say anything at a reasonable volume, and we just let each other talk while we're swinging, because you're not supposed to talk.
A little trash talk kind of thing.
Yeah, like we could totally, trash talk, and provided that you didn't interfere with the actual swing, you could throw things in the line of sight. So like as long as it was up, so you could like throw a golf tee and stuff like that. As long as you didn't hit the club or the ball, and it was so challenging, but it really made me more mentally tough.
Yeah,
interesting stuff. But anyway, yeah. But tackling, maybe get like 1 tackle per round. That'd be fun.
Yeah, or they have to run from really far away, so you got some time. It's like that quarterback.
It's called speed golf.
Is it really?
Like, yeah, you take the number of strokes plus the number of minutes that it takes you to finish the round, and that's your score.
Oh, interesting.
It's fascinating. So it's very athletic. Anyway, so here's a couple other rules I just thought we'd go through because I want people to go out and get this book and get all 40 total rules. But there's a couple that I really appreciated. One was, "Thou shalt brag about how busy thou art." I hate this one, but it is so true. And I catch myself doing this all the time. And then I literally just today, phone call before this interview, I did that. And I remember asking myself, why did I do that? So why do people do that?
I don't know. I think it makes us feel important. I guess, just the idea of someone just sitting around like, if you're an entrepreneur and the phone's not ringing, it's kind of an indicator that maybe you're not very busy or not very successful. So I think that's part of it. I think part of it too is the busyness keeps us from having to deal with other issues that we might need to be dealing with, right? Whether it's like pain or some change we need to make or something deep down we know maybe our life sucks and we know it, but if we just keep busy doing what we think we're supposed to do, then maybe we won't have to deal with it. And I really think that's part of it, is just to not have to deal with some of this stuff. And basically, it's kind of the theme of this whole book. I say a lot that it is not my goal to tell people what to do, what choices to make, what rules they should break. I just want people to be mindful about it, because too many of us are just going along with what we feel like we should be doing or what we're supposed to be doing, and we don't even stop to consider an alternative. And I think that the busyness thing sometimes is like a drug, that it's easier to just stay busy than to slow down and make hard decisions about what direction we really want things to go. And a lot of times too, it's like we think it's not a choice that, we're busy, we're going from one thing to the next. I think it was Chris Brogan who had said that our email inbox is a perfect picture of what other people's priorities for us are. And I love that line because it's true. I always feel like, for me, when we talk about like the resistance, like Stephen Pressfield, for me, the hardest thing is getting my butt in the chair to make art. That's the hardest thing. And I have never once, Matt, gotten an email from someone that said, "Jason, today you just need to work on art. That's what you need to do." No, it's always like, "Hey, can you make this? Can you do this? Can you do that?" I've never had anyone email me to tell me the thing I know I'm supposed to do. And that's where it's easier just to have all this busyness and say, "Well, I'm too busy to work on this other stuff." And that's kind of a lie. That's a lie that Adultitis likes to have us believe.
Yeah, I think it's a badge of honor that some people wear, and it's a total reversal of even like 20 or 30 years ago, but definitely 50, 60 years ago, when the badge of honor that people wore was the life of luxury and being at, banker's hours. It was a status symbol to say, yeah, I don't work weekends, and I work 9 to 4, and I go on, 2-week vacations in the Hamptons. And now it's the complete opposite. It's like a badge of honor to work 70, 80 hours a week. And I'm slammed. I'm so busy. It's weird how society has shifted from that. And it's not a financial thing, because so many of the people that work 70, 80 hours a week are wealthy.
Yeah.
And it's not, and if they love what they're doing, that's one thing, but so many times they don't.
Yeah, well, it is interesting. So I as a professional speaker, I'm a part of the National Speakers Association. And one of the things that we are not allowed to do for, I don't know if it's antitrust or whatever, we're not supposed to talk about fees, because you're not supposed to, their fear is that we'll all collude together and decide what fees should and shouldn't be. So when we're all together at a conference, we're not supposed to talk about, who makes what or what our fees are. But there are no rules of talking about how many days we're on the road. So that has kind of become the stand-in for how successful you are. It's like, oh yeah, I was on the road 300 days last year. I was on the road 250 days last year. And what's interesting is if you really dig a little bit deeper, some of these people who are bragging about how many days are on the road are also on their third marriage, and they have kids that don't know them. And so on one hand, they're holding this up to be this measure of success. And that pretty early on, Kim and I decided that at least while our kids are young, there is a certain number of speaking engagements that I will take a year, and that's it. And it's around 52 actually is what the number is, which is an average of once a week, although it doesn't usually work out that way. Some weeks there's 3 in a week, and then some days I have a couple weeks off. But it's just if you're gone too long, and this is again in this particular profession, you just drift away from your spouse. You're not really present to what is going on with your kids, and that's a big deal. And I think it could probably be expanded to most people. If you're so busy with all of these other things you think are so important, you're missing out on some of the best things that are happening right under your noses. And that, to me, that's the ultimate trick that Adultitis plays, is to get us focused on stuff that maybe is urgent, but is not really as important as it seems. And then that's when you get, your kids grow up and you're like, whoa, when did that happen? Or you drift apart from your wife and you're like, whoa, what happened to us? We used to be right with each other. And it's those little choices every day to stay stuck in the busyness that, once in a while you have seasons of life. Like right now we've got a book launch. We've been pretty crazy busy with that, but that's something we're definitely mindful of. It could easily become a habit and start to tell a story that we didn't intend on telling in the first place with regard to our family and our kids and stuff.
Well, I love that. You set a rule, like it's 52. That's the number. I'm not going to break that. That is a rule that actually is good to keep.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the, we don't use phones after 7 p.m. That's a good rule to keep.
Yeah.
At least for business. I'll use it to talk to my mom, but that's, and that's different. But like those are the types of rules that I think are actually very healthy. But going back to stupid rules,
yes,
rules that don't exist. There was one about thou shalt get a job with benefits. That is not a rule, clearly, but what is it about benefits? I mean, like, I don't get that. Like, it doesn't, I can't wrap my head around that, like, intellectually, I guess. What is it about benefits that, like, literally causes people to freak out and be like, that job has benefits, I have to take that one?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's a product of, the Depression and parents who grew up in that. But at least for me, it was a big deal in our home to, benefits was a big deal, health insurance and dental and all this kind of stuff. And although it's definitely a good thing, it always kind of, the kind of underlying message was always like, it's worth having the benefits even if you don't like the job. Then to me, that is where it kind of fell apart. And funny thing about this rule is I actually agree with it, but it's in a different way. So like when I look at my job, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Matt, like my commute is 5 seconds long. When I'm not speaking on the road, I get to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with my kids every single day. We just like you, most days I could go to the zoo at 2 o'clock in the morning, or 2 o'clock in the morning. I would never want to do that. In the afternoon, I could do that
inside the cages at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. There's so many things. I get paid to travel to cool places and talk about things I like. So like my job is filled with benefits. I just so happen to also have to pay for my own health care and retirement plan. So I think it's a really good idea to get a job that has benefits. I think the key is to make sure they're ones you want. And that's the big key for me. Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. It's, I have different benefits and I love them. So and it means I have to once a year sit down and plan with our evil accountant Brent, about how to manage our retirement fund. And he helps us do that and gives us a very handy dandy spreadsheet that I look at once and forget about for 364 days. So one of the other ones, we're going to do two more, I think, is thou shalt hide thy weirdness. And when I read this, I immediately thought of our daughter Arceli, who said, I want to dress like a rainbow. And so that meant pink shirt, purple pants, and teal shoes. And we informed her that, okay, this outfit will work because the pink shirt had a little bit of teal and it kind of ties into the shoes. You see, we're getting really analytical. But, sweetie, this would look much better if you had white pants. But I want to look like a rainbow.
There's no white in rainbows, Dad. Come on.
And you're wearing purple pants. And we let her wear purple pants. And guess what? Nobody died. Everybody still thinks she looked awesome and cute. And at least that I've checked, nobody is dead because my daughter wore pink pants, or pink shirt, purple pants, and teal shoes.
Can we confirm this? This is important. We need to make sure this is a true fact.
Not 100% sure. There are corpses in her class at church from Sunday, I'm sure. Other children passed out from fright. Yeah, thou shalt hide weirdness. We should embrace our weirdness.
Yeah, well, that's what I love about kids is they have no shame whatsoever. Like I think the story I tell in my book is about my daughter, watching her go down the sidewalk. She's on a scooter, which again normal, and she's wearing a bike helmet. Okay, she's safe. She's got snow boots on, and she's holding an umbrella in one hand on a sunny 73-degree day. I'm like, that's weird. Like, I'm pretty sure no one in the world right now is even close to doing that exact same thing. And I think as we all had that, we all were weird. And I think as we get older, we get shamed somewhere along the line, and we realize, oh, we're not supposed to wear that, or we're not supposed to do that, or we get made fun of. And then we kind of bottle that up. And I have a friend, David Rendell. He talks a lot about being weird and embracing your inner freak, as he calls it. And he reminded me of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It was a perfect example of how he got made fun of for that bright red nose, but it was that very thing that ended up saving the day and being his most useful thing. And I think that's pretty much true for all of us. The things that make us weird are the things that make us unique, and the things that make us unique is exactly what the world needs. So, we gotta not hide that weirdness so much.
And I think that's why cool companies like Zappos, I'm working with Delivering Happiness, which is Tony Hsieh's and Jen Lim's organization. I'm working with them on a new course coming out actually shortly after this episode will air. And one of the core values that Zappos has is that you should embrace a little weirdness. And he's careful to point out it's a little weirdness. We don't want
we don't have to freak people out, right?
But be a little weird and just let that out. And I think that's why companies like Zappos are they're every year they're one of the top 100 companies to work for, even though they might not necessarily pay the highest wages or have all the greatest benefits. I used air bunnies again there. You get to be weird and still work there. And to me, that is a benefit. Like, you just get to be yourself. And I think that's awesome. So I definitely think that thou shalt hide their weirdness is a stupid rule. It's not a rule.
That's right.
Last one I want to go over is, and I think this is probably the most important one because I think it covers so many of the other ones. I think this is like the overarching one in a way. Thou shalt care about what other people think. Tell us about the story there. Tell us about the red shoes.
Yeah, so this probably happened about 2 years ago. I had always been very conservative in my shoe choices, mostly because I have no fashion sense whatsoever. So I figured if you keep it simple, you can't go wrong. So my shoes were always like white or black or brown. And, just keep it simple. And then all of a sudden, I would start to see people wearing just red shoes, bright red shoes. I noticed it. I was like, wow. And it just always seemed like those people were just fun and adventurous and getting everything out of life. And I was like, I kind of want to be one of those red shoe people. And there's this little voice in the back of my head, probably adultitis. I was just like, no, you are not a red shoe person. You are not a celebrity. You cannot pull this off. It doesn't go with anything. There's all these, reasons. You look like Bozo the Clown, blah, 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 blah. And it stuck for a long time. But I got to tell you, this urge to get red shoes would not leave me. And I'm having this argument in my head over and over and over and over again. Eventually, I had sort of like this heart-to-heart with myself. And I said, all right, if you want to get red shoes because you think they'll make you happy, just frickin' get the red shoes already, all right? If the only reason you're not is because of what other people will think, you're being a damn fool. Well, man, I did not want to be a damn fool. So it's funny you mentioned Zappos. I got on Zappos.com specifically because they have a generous return policy. So you can tell how committed I was to this. I had flinked in like, well, I'll get them, but at least I can turn them back in if I don't like them. And I was going to get my normal white pair of generic shoes I would have normally got and the red shoes. And it just so happened they didn't have the white shoes in stock. So I get the red shoes. They come a few days later. I lace them up. It's like my soul does jumping jacks. They're my favorite pair of shoes I've ever had. Now, full disclosure, I don't know if they've made me any more fun or adventurous or get anything more out of life, but they definitely make me feel more like a person who doesn't care about as much about what people think. And I tell, I kind of talk about this a lot in my programs. And there are some people, it's funny, there are people that come up to me that want to show me their red shoes. So they have a picture of their phone. I have red shoes. And I get the sense of other people are like, look, buddy, if the only way I can beat adultitis is by getting red shoes, it ain't going to happen. And so I like to point out that it's not actually about red shoes at all. I think every single one of us has something that we've always probably secretly wanted to have or do or be. And we don't because we're either afraid of what other people would think or we think we're not that type of person. And my message is pretty simple, is you are that type of person if you want to be. And so ultimately the real question is, what are your red shoes? And if you're not going to go for it because of what other people think, then you're a damn fool, man. That's what it comes down to. Wow. You just made me think of two things there. One is my new friend, Eric Miller, who, first time I met him, he flew in from Colorado to Fort Wayne, and we met at a Chili's, I think. And we met through Jeff Goins, who booked The Art of Work. We're both in the book, and so he read about me and was like, oh, you're in Fort Wayne, that's where I grew up. We met at this Chili's, and I was like, yeah, I have no idea what you look like. And he's like, yeah, I'll be wearing it was like a black T-shirt, a pair of jeans, and a pair of pink flip-flops. I'm like, I just like assume he's joking, and sure enough, he's walking up and I look down and I'm like, dude, you have on pink flip-flops. And he's like, yeah. So he tells me this story about how he was in the Costa Rican jungle and lost a flip-flop, and there was in the mud up ahead, no joke, right after he loses. Apparently, this is a common place for people to lose flip-flops in the Costa Rican jungle, I guess. Up ahead, stuck in the mud, is another flip-flop, and it's pink though. And so I think this is the story. Either that or he finds another flip-flop and then he goes to the store and all they have is pink flip-flops. I forget which one it was. Long story short is he wears pink flip-flops and everybody comments on him. And so now for the last decade, he wears pink flip-flops every day and it's a conversation starter. And so shortly after we met, I got a box in the mail, a UPS box, and it was a thank you note for lunch and 4 pairs of pink flip-flops. Nice. So I know that's our favorite. That's our daughter's favorite pair of pink flip-flops. Anyway, awesome. But you also reminded me of something that just came to mind when you were talking about that. Was one day Tara and I were driving by a guy on the sidewalk. This guy has on headphones and he's just dancing up a storm. He's on this downtown Fort Wayne and he's just dancing. I'm like, that guy looks like he'd be fun to hang out with. And I told Tara, I said, the next time I see someone dancing on the sidewalk, I'm parking the car and I'm getting out and joining them. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, why wait for someone else to do it? Huh. And to this day, I still haven't danced on the sidewalk. So I have kind of a mission. But she said, why wait for someone else to do it? Why do you need to join someone else? Why couldn't you just be like that guy and do it by yourself? So she was a permission granter for you then. Now you have homework. And, now that you thought of this, you got to do it, man. Yeah, and she was a reminder. That's right. So as we wrap up here, Jason, first of all, thank you for your time and your generosity with this.
I feel like I want people to go get the book, but I feel like if for some reason they can't afford it or they don't know how to read, I don't think I have many people like that. If you don't know how to read, just look at the pictures. They're awesome.
There's just not enough pictures in here for me. That would
There's
be
pictures. There's pictures. It's a book with pictures. It's like a real book with pictures, though. It's not, like you said, it's not like one of those cheesy gift books. I just want to encourage people, like I said, that they have permission and just really to get out and be more childlike, because there are so many good qualities from doing that. And if you could encourage people, like it could be in the book, it could not be in the book. If you can encourage people to do one thing that's either in the book or not in the book, what would it be?
I think a general thing that the book encompasses, and is just really what we're all about, is to look at your life as a story and make it a good one. Like what would it be called? If they made a movie about your life, would it be called You've Got Mail or Speed or Nightmare on Elm Street? Or to be like It's a Wonderful Life? I just think your life is a story, make it a good one, and just refuse to coast through life accepting the plot and premise set out by someone else. That's what this whole book is about, is to write your own story and make it a good one.
So, Jason, this is the one question I ask every guest, only question I ask every guest, and that is, when you look ahead, to that day many years from now, hopefully, what legacy do you want to leave?
Oh, boy. That is a good question. So what legacy do I want to leave? I want, as Steve Jobs said, I want to make a dent in the universe. All along, Kim and I, it's taken us a long time to figure out how to make money at our passion. It's always been about the mission first, and it took us a long time of spaghetti throwing to figure out things on how to make things work financially and as a business. But even now, as we talk about it, we had this conversation about a year ago as we were, getting this book deal and thinking about what it could lead to. Is we have a really big desire to make an impact on tons and tons and tons and tons of people. But then we ultimately came down to the fact that if our kids turn out to be a-holes, we have failed. And it's true. And so we kind of have made a decision that, like, our kids are our most important legacy, and hopefully that they can embody some of these things that we write about. And as many people as we get to impact along the way is great. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter if we're not doing the job, the most important job that we have. So I guess that's sort of what we look at as our legacy.
Love it. So, wow, that was a good one. Don't have your kids be a-holes. So here's what I want you to do, audience.
Corollary to that is that they don't think we're a-holes, because there's sometimes parents are super successful. Their kids turned out pretty good, but the kids think the parents are a-holes. So I guess it goes both ways.
That's funny. So audience, how do I top that? I know one of the things that Jason does at the end of the book, and you'll see this, is because I know everybody's going to go grab this, and you can grab that on the show notes page, mattmcwilliams.com/080 for episode 80. I want you to share your rules that don't exist. You can either share them on the show notes page, leave a comment there, or you can tweet them, any of the social media stuff, using the hashtag #NotARule. So hashtag #NotARule. And tell you what, I just had an idea, Jason. So let me know what you think of this. This might be stupid, and if it is, I'm going to edit it. Let's have everyone who leaves a comment or tweets, I'll limit it to those two, using the hashtag #NotARule. This episode is live on July 7th. So anyone who tweets or comments with that hashtag #NotARule, and feel free to mention me and Jason. I'm at Matt McWilliams 2. Don't forget the 2 or you get an egg. And Jason is I love that one. So earlier I commented on how good my segue was. Now I just commented on how good my joke was. This is lame. I got to edit that out too. Jason is at Escape Adulthood. So I'm at Matt McWilliams 2 at Escape Adulthood. If you share your non-rule, We're going to pick our favorite, craziest non-rule before July 21st. That's 2 weeks after this goes live. So unless you're one of those late listeners, you're in. And then on the July 28th episode, I'll announce the winner and also possibly our baby's name if we have a baby by then. And the winner, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give away a copy of Jason's book to whoever wins. And we'll say I'm thinking I got to make this a reasonable number that my wife will approve. We'll say like a $25 gift card to someplace crazy. One of the things you talk about is the late night ice cream runs or something else. So leave a comment, tweet, hashtag, not a rule. Pictures go a long way. In fact, one of the things that you put in the book, doing the not rule, the non-rule makes it even better. So it's one thing to say thou shalt not wear underpants on the outside of your clothing. It's not a rule. It's another to include a picture of you breaking that non-rule. So do I need to edit that or is that good?
I think that's good. And I
awesome.
think we should also
we have a contest.
The winner gets to name your child. Or maybe edit that part out. But the rest of it I like.
It would be easier for me to throw 3 zeros on the end of that 25 than to give
your wife
that
to
right
okay
up.
that one, right?
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Add up with a kid named Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, something like that. Aspen.
Oh, it'll be like clicks involved in the name.
Yeah,
anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
wow.
love it. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, so let's do that. We'll do a little contest. Let's see some crazy stuff, some childlike stuff, but that's awesome. And Jason, before I let you go on a very personal note, I want to thank you on behalf of myself and a beautiful little 4-year-old and my very pregnant wife who are soon to enjoy a late night pajama run to Dairy Queen. I just want to thank you for that.
Awesome.
She doesn't know yet, but we're going to do that this week.
Very cool. I want to hear a full report of how it goes.
And pictures, and I will use the hashtag not a rule.
That's cool.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. Guys, he's helping people to escape adultitis. He's teaching others why being more childlike is actually great for the world, and I believe he's written a world-changing book. Jason, you are a world changer. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Matt. This has been a blast, a pleasure, and an honor. Thank you.
Wow, I know I said this at the beginning, Matt, but this interview literally changed the way I look at life. And a reminder for you that you can get the links to Jason's book and everything that Matt and Jason just talked about at mattmcwilliams.com/081. So Matt, what was your biggest takeaway from this interview with Jason? I know you said it was one of your favorites. So what is the biggest thing you got out of it? You're not making this editing job any easier.
Well, I was going to say something. I was perfectly on target, and then it was like something came up from my throat. All right, yeah.
Go for it.
I mean, one thing that I got out of it, as I read it early on, and Jason and I talked about this in the interview, like I just started grabbing the highlighter, and my wife, Tara, got mad at me. He's like, "Do not highlight that book. This is like a beautiful book. It's a gorgeous book." And for those listening, I can't show it to you, but go to Amazon, go to the show notes page, click on it, and just get a peek inside the book. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's got the glossy pictures and all that. So as I told Jason, I have all these little post-it note type things sticking up to mark things. And then I have to read the whole page again because I can't highlight individual parts. But, the biggest takeaway that I got is kind of an overall theme of, we reach this point in life where life gets serious, it seems, and we lose that childlike outlook on life. What do we lose? Like, what do we lose that's childlike? We lose, the childlike ability to play, not ability to play, but the childlike view of life as being a playground. We lose the childlike faith. We lose childlike, curiosity. We lose childlike, just amazement at things. Like, think about like the first time that you discovered that you were capable of doing something and you just went, yes. How awesome was that? Or the childlike amazement at like the first time you see a sunset, childlike amazement at the first time you see like one of those ultra blue skies. And, I know that one of the things I've been working on, it sounds very like, of course, as an adult, I work on this. One of the things that I've been working on is really just being intentional about having some of those childlike fascinations and childlike curiosities and childlike desires in a way. And it's tough. There's no doubt that it's tough when we have, it's hard to be childlike when you have a mortgage payment, when you have the electric bills due. And I get it. It's tough in life, perhaps if you're going through a job loss or going through a divorce or going through death, like somebody that has died. But to have that childlike outlook on life and rekindling that, because it got lost along the way. And I know my audience has heard me talk about Mark so often that I talk about how, we're born with that childlike ability to, like, when we're 6 years old, 7 years old, it's an entrepreneurial spirit in a way, but we go through life and we say, when we're edit. Okay. I know, Mark, that you've, that my audience has heard me talk about this, but I talk a lot about that. Like, finding that place where we were when we were children, and many of people call it an entrepreneurial spirit, where the attitude we have when we see something wrong when we're 7 years old is, I can fix that. I'm the solution to that problem. The attitude of, when there's a problem in the world and we don't really say, like, oh, I hope someday somebody will fix that. And we're the solution to life's problems. And sometimes it's naivete. Sometimes it's, really, am I going to be the solution to the problem if I go make like a big ball of rubber bands and try to sell it on the internet for $10 and that's going to solve world hunger? No. But we have that belief. And then somewhere along the line, we lose that and we say, well, someday I hope somebody fixes that, or when is somebody going to fix that? And we get angry at the system. We get angry at the man. We get angry at the government. And we lose that ability. And this book, for me, it was hopefully one of the first steps into really rekindling that spirit.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's, I got a lot of that as well. But the one thing that I got is I realized how much, and kind of the same as you said, is I have adultitis so many times. And I realized that, it's so important for me as a father to have fun with my kids. I really looked at it from the parenting perspective. I do a good job. I think I'm a good dad most of the time, but I can't help but think about, there's a Brian Regan sketch and I think you're familiar with Brian Regan, where he talks about how his child was like coloring on the walls. And he's like, don't color on the walls. And he's like, because, our house is more important than your eternal happiness, or something like that. And that's really what I got out of Jason's interview. And what he was saying is, our kids are our biggest legacy. That's the most important thing that me as a father is that I do. And so many times I get so caught up in, don't run, don't do this, don't do that. And I don't do those things where it's like, hey, you know what, you colored outside the lines, but that's okay. It's awesome. I see what you're doing. Or, like you said, just having fun. And some of those just random things that we do, that really, I think I could do more and I could do better at, and get to the point where, my kids don't just think I'm this boring adult that all I care about is being quiet and sitting down and don't speak unless you're spoken to. And all of those things, that was really the things that I got out of this interview was how important that is as a parent, and being able to do that better as a parent.
Right on. I know you probably, remember the post I wrote within the past month and a half or so. It was something called Finding the Beauty in the Mess of Life. And it was about Araceli. She just turned 4.
Yeah.
And she's outside, and we're talking to my mom on Skype, and my mom's just watching Araceli play. And I got mad at her for sticking her hands down in the mud. Mm-hmm. We've had an unusually wet spring and summer here in Fort Wayne, and her hands were caked in mud, and I got mad at her. And then I'm like, my wife kind of looks at me, Tara looks at me, he's like, what's wrong with that? And and it's one of those things, like, the truth is, what's so bad about it? What's so bad about getting your hands in the mud and finding that beauty? And maybe this is a simplistic way to look at life. And maybe, I don't know, maybe people listen and they say, well, yeah, that's easy if, it's easy if you, whatever, if you don't have financial worries, and that's easy if you're not, you're so, like, so-and-so's not sick. I don't know. Maybe this is a very simplistic view of life, but I just believe if people would read this book and put into action the calls that, that Jason is putting on your life,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to go be so bold as to say the world would be a better place. And, another book that I'm a big fan of right now is called Kid President's Guide to Being Awesome.
Oh,
it's for those of you who don't know, Kid President, what is his name? Robbie. Oh man, I forget his last name. He's a little 10-year-old kid.
yeah.
And who's licked the walls of the White House and who's done all these crazy things. And one of the things that somebody wrote in there was like, why are kids awesome? And one of the many reasons I remember is, kids don't start wars. And
yeah.
And I just remember thinking that, and I'm like, the reality is the world would be a better place if there just were no war. And maybe that's naive. Like maybe that's just a completely naive to think. And yes, some kids are bullies and some kids start fights, but I don't know. Like, I think if we all could get some of that childlike spirit back, the world would truly be a better place.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, and I think it's important to point out, I mean, Jason's not saying be completely naive about things. I mean, there is a time to tell your kid what to do and to be an adult. When your kid's running towards the street, that is the time to say, don't do that, And that's not what he's saying, but I think you're right. If we just had this mindset and this mentality of, we're going to look at things like a kid looks at things and have that wonder and that excitement and that, that awe at things, I mean, I'm amazed at the way my kids can be so amazed by tiny little things, and so many times I feel like, I look back and it's like, I probably stifle their creativity because I'm like, wow, that's really great. What a neat drawing, or whatever it is, or yeah, that's a bug. That's what bugs do. Or, those types of things. I think you're right. If we could just kindle a little bit more of that, I think it really would change the world because one, I mean, we would be happier. I would be happier if I could be that excited about little things like that. So, I'm interested to see what everybody else thinks of the interview. Like we've said before, you can go to mattmcwilliams.com/081 to let us know what you think. But I also want to recap that contest that you guys talked about. And, one of the things you mentioned there is you say that the podcast episode was going to go live on the 7th. It's actually going live on the 14th. So
epic fail on my part.
Epic fail. See, that was not me. That was not the delegation on my part.
I should have delegated the date of this to you.
So with that in mind, we're going to extend, Matt, if this is okay with you, we're going to extend that contest out to the 28th of July. Rather than the 21st, so they get those full 2 weeks.
Let's do that.
And then we'll announce the winner on August 4th.
Yep.
So as a reminder, Matt asked that people either comment in the comments on the show notes page, one of their favorite non-rules, or tweet out their favorite non-rule with the hashtag #NotARule, all one word. And you and Jason also mentioned that if you show video proof or photo proof of you doing said non-rule, it goes even farther as far as being chosen as the winner of the contest. And if I remember right, Matt, you mentioned that the winner of the contest would get a copy of Jason's book as well as a $25 gift certificate or gift card to somewhere. I don't think you decided where, but someplace.
No, we're going to let them decide, and it needs to be someplace that lets you act out on that. So maybe it's Dairy Queen.
Right.
Maybe it's Cold Stone. I don't want to leave Cold Stone out. They have better ice cream. I'm just saying. And
so it won't be a gift card to like LegalZoom or something like.
We're not. Yeah, it's not gonna. We're not giving you a gift card to Lowe's unless your childlike thing is like to build something ridiculous.
Build a treehouse.
It needs to be. Yeah, it needs to be that. And right. So yeah, you know what? Tell you what. If you're gonna build a treehouse, then we will do a gift card to Lowe's, or to Home Depot, or to your chosen house goods. Construction. You can tell I'm really into these things.
Hammers and stuff.
Yeah, hammers and tools and such. Other things that I put on a belt that I keep in a plastic bin in my thing that cover up the screwdrivers the only tools I ever use. But anyway, wow. So that said, it's to a place of your choice, and the purpose of it is to allow you to act out on these not rules.
And we'll announce that on August 4th, like we said, which you may or may not be on by that time. I think you made the comment to Jason that you will not be allowing people to name your firstborn child.
No, we've already named our firstborn child.
Oh.
This will be our second. This will be our second.
Yes,
born
that
child.
would be second-born.
That's due. Yes.
You can't rename Araceli.
We're not going to rename Araceli. No, she's permanently Araceli.
Yeah, you will also not be able to name the second-born child.
No, you will not be able to name any of our children.
Yes, but you will get a gift card. and a book.
A book
So,
and a gift card. No naming
August
rights.
4th. All right. So let's, should we thank a few reviewers as we wrap up here?
Let's do that.
Do you have that list in front of you?
I do. I
Okay.
do. Let's, this is a cool one. I'm actually going to read this one, Mark, and take this one. So I want to thank Writing Whisperer, who said, and I remember seeing this email. This is one of those cool ones. I've been training for the New York City Marathon, and during all my training runs, I'm listening to inspiring podcasts to fuel my mind. I'm happy to add the World Changer Show to the lineup. Thank you, Matt, for recognizing that each of us is or can be a world changer, and for featuring stories of everyday people who decided the world needed their gifts. Because that's who Jason Kotecki is. That's who we are. That's who all of us are. Is you know, I mean, aren't we all who's not an everyday person? Like, no, I'm a Monday, Tuesday, and Friday person. I don't know, but
Right.
you know. So Writing Whisperer, thank you. I forget her real name. The Golden Mind Show, Dr. Bernie, Brandon T. Adams, and Tim Cooper, EDP. I have no idea what EDP stands for. Do you know, Mark? Google that.
I do not.
Educated Doctor of Philosophy. I have no idea. So thank you.
Extremely dedicated person.
Oh, good one. Good one. I'll tell you what, include your, what does EDP mean in your contest entry, and you will receive a potential bonus point. I have no idea. So thank you guys to all 5 of you for your ratings and reviews recently.
Yeah, and if you have not given us a review, please do so. You can head over to the show notes page, mattmcwilliams.com/081, and you'll find the link there for the rating review. It helps us get discovered. It helps people helps us to continue to increase the number of people that we can impact with this message. And it also is the place where you can sign up for that super cool, nifty contest.
Yeah.
Edit. Yeah. Thank you for everything you add to the show, Matt.
Delegation. What was I supposed to say there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, I concur. All right, let me write that down for all the audio. Okay, so next week on the show, we're going to talk about the 4 musts that will take you from successful to very successful. And you don't want to miss that.
No, you do not, because who doesn't want to go from just successful to very successful?
Right.
I mean, if you've reached that point. I mean, yeah, this is when I'm excited about this next one. I say that about everyone, of course, because I'm passionate about this. Before we go, I want to share with you.
Talking about it if you weren't.
Exactly. I want to share with you the quote.
Oh, yes.
And it's from the book that you can win. Again, we talked about that. No naming rights involved. From Leo DeRocher, who was he a baseball manager?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
I can't remember for who, but
I googled it because I had no idea who it was when you had.
I did. I know he was. He's like, I think he's a Hall of Famer, and he says, "I believe in rules." Okay, so let's be clear. We're not talking about anarchy. Not believing in rules and just anarchy. Because here's what he says: "I believe in rules. If there weren't any rules, how could you break them?" And as Arnold Schwarzenegger says, one of the famous, he says, "Break the rules, not the law. Break the rules." And we're not talking about the law, but rules. And so many of the rules, this is the premise of the book, is so many of the rules, we don't know where they came from. Why is that the rule? Like, where does that come from? Thou shalt not, color, draw on your children's face. Who said that was it? I mean, where did that rule come from? Because sometimes that could be justifiable. And I think there's some good rules in life, but there are also some really silly ones, and we need to break those because they're not rules.
Yes, I agree. So, folks, until next week, remember, you were born to change the world. You were born to make history. So believe it, become it, and pass it on.
Let's redo that real quick.
Which one?
The last part.
Yours or mine?
The very until next week.
Okay. Are you adding something?
Add before I can't type because of the angle here. Before, so believe it. You were born to break the rules. Does that work? Do we want to say something else?
Nope, that works. You were born to break the rules. Okay. Until next week, remember, you were born to change the world. You were born to make history. You were born to break the rules. So believe it, become it, and pass it on. The Chandler.
And yeah, we're done. That's my invitation to my friend Chandler Bolt. Every time,
Chandler.
every picture.
Yep.
His pearly white teeth. So Chandler, if you're watching, I love you. And we'll see you next time, everyone.
Peace.